Cool. All right, we're going to get started. You're recording.
Is that you, Jackie, recording or me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. So good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Adam Hall. I sit inside the People-centric IT team. We do all of the end-user computing scenarios within the enterprise mobility space. So we cover configuration manager and Windows Intune. We cover all the remote desktop services and VDI scenarios, all the identity, hybrid identity series that we're covering today. And then additionally, we cover, what's the last one? We'll get to it. So I'm going to go through the hybrid identity content today, position what our approach to identity is, explain to you the solutions that we have, and then go through the demos that we associate with this so you can see how we're lighting this up in real-world scenarios today. Okay. And I don't know why my slides are not progressing. There we go. Okay. So when we are thinking about the challenges that we're trying to face out there in the mobility space, there's four things that we really care about. The first is users. And we have users with an expectation today that they can work in any location and be able to get access to all of their work resources. We've seen as we've progressed through the technology eras where we started with kind of mainframes with green screens and thin clients and terminals remoting to a big, powerful beast at the back. We've moved through the server and client kind of world where you were tied to a desktop in your environment. We've moved through the laptop era, the remote access era, where users became mobile for the first time, but on PC-like devices. And now in this world of mobility, we have very small devices like phones and tablets where users can work on these from anywhere at any time. And so there's an expectation that they can grab a device and be able to work on it. Now, as all these devices have come into the workplace, this explosion of different devices, and not just different platforms, but also different form factors as well, touch versus keyboard and mouse, for example, it's really eroded the standards-based approach to IT. I come from a desktop management background, and 10 years ago, everybody had the exact same PC. It was a standard image, it had the same configuration, the same apps on it, and you knew exactly what was out there because you had a full inventory of exactly what devices you had. Now, it could be any device, it could be any platform, and yet IT is still expected to be able to deliver all of the applications and data onto those devices so users can work. When we think about apps, how do you deploy apps across all of that? Are you going to develop applications that run on iOS and Android and Windows as well? Are you going to use desktop virtualization to deliver applications to locations that you otherwise wouldn't be able to get those apps to? So there's decisions to be made there. And then from a data perspective, this is really the last mile. It's actually relatively easy to get data onto a device. The question is, how do you maintain compliance? How do you protect that data whilst it's on a device? And then in the event that something goes wrong or someone's finished with a device, how do you get it back off? Those are all significant challenges that we are looking to address with what we're coming to market with. So our approach to enterprise mobility is by empowering people-centric IT. We think about all those users, devices, apps, and data in three ways: management and control, access control, and protection of the information that is in those devices. We want to enable users to be able to work on the device of their choice and give them a consistent experience across all of those. We want to protect the data, both in terms of the access control as well as in transit and sitting at rest on those machines. And then we want to unify the environment from an IT point of view to be able to manage all of this from a mobile device management point of view. This is Configuration Manager connected to Windows Intune. From an identity and access control point of view, this is Active Directory connecting to Azure Active Directory. And so we're going to go through how we are bringing all of this with a very specific slant towards hybrid identity. Now, the four solutions that we have within PCIT are the hybrid identity we're covering today, user and device management, which we will see some elements of today, the desktop virtualization scenarios, remote desktop services, VDI, remote app, and then access and information protection being the access controls, the remote access, and then the encryption of data and the protection of information at rest as well as in flight, with things like the rights management services that we're bringing to both on-prem and out into the cloud. So, without further ado, let's take a look at hybrid identity. From a unification point of view, we want to create a centralized identity on-premise. This is Active Directory, and we have tools such as both the surrounding technologies of Active Directory Federation Services, Active Directory Certificate Services, as well as things like Identity Manager, which allow us to create identities on-premise that bring all those attributes together. We then want to provide synchronization and federation to be able to both connect to cloud-based services with things like Azure Active Directory, as well as between organizations and being able to share and collaborate with external users with sensitive information. From a user enablement point of view, there's two things that we focus on here. The first is self-service and providing users with the ability to just get stuff done without having to go through a long-winded process of working with IT. We want to do things like self-service password reset, group management, the ability to onboard new users in their own right within a delegated model where they can't break anything, but they can also get what they need to get their job done. We want to enable single sign-on, and we'll talk more about single sign-on very shortly, but single sign-on, what we really mean by that is a single user identity for each user. Same username, same password to access everything. In some cases, we can do a genuine single sign-on with a seamless experience where the user just gets logged on. In other cases, we're just simply keeping everything in sync so that they present the same credentials every time to get access to what they need. Then from a data protection point of view, we really want to provide the strong authentication controls, claims-based access, multi-factor authentication, conditional access controls where your username and your password aren't enough anymore, especially when you're coming from a device that we don't know about. Your username and password is just not strong enough. We may want device registration, certificate authentication of the device. We may want a multi-factor authentication call to go even further. Configuring single sign-on, it takes some work for IT to set up, and we need to make sure that we make that easy and seamless for the IT departments to enable all this great stuff so that users can be productive. And then from a compliance point of view, we want to make sure that all the governance, attestation, the reporting is in place so that customers can remain in compliance with whatever their policy needs are and be able to go through things like attestation and proving that they are in those kinds of states as well. So these are the things that we're going to go through over the next, say, 45 minutes, and then we're going to go through some demo to show how this all comes together. Okay, let's start with the unification of the environment, creating a centralized identity so that we can bring those users together, and then let's talk about synchronization and federation. Okay, why do we want to create a common identity? Let's just answer the very simple question. The reality is that users are more productive by having a single sign-on to all their resources. When we talk to customers, when we actually engage with end users, and we do a lot of research in this kind of space, the reality is that most users are comfortable having a higher level of authentication if there's only one thing that they need to remember. If they are quite happy to have a longer, more complex password and do things like multi-factor authentication if you take away the fact that they have to remember 6 different passwords for different systems. That's incredibly unproductive for them and just causes frustration and leads them to do things like writing passwords down on pieces of paper and so on, which basically undoes all the good work that you're trying to achieve in the first place. We want to do this across not only on-premise with things like Windows Server Active Directory, but also out into the cloud with our Azure Active Directory as well. The ability to provide single sign-on and a single identity across both all the traditional on-premise data center-based resources and things like Office 365 and SaaS applications is an incredibly powerful and useful thing for IT to set out so that their end users are productive. Getting that single sign-on, we provide access to single sign-on through things like Windows Intune, Office 365. Those are our two kind of primary use cases. They both sit on top of Azure Active Directory, if you weren't aware of that, as well as Dynamics CRM Online as well. And then as you'll see here shortly, the ability to provide single sign-on and access to a huge number of SaaS applications out there and being able to configure all of those so that the users can go to one place and get access to everything that they need. We also want to keep developers in the loop here. As we move forward, we have a very forward-looking approach to identity, and as we move forward, we want to move traditional authentication mechanisms to modern protocols, things like using SAML and OAuth and claims. Really, Microsoft are taking a very forward-looking stance around identity. We will continue to maintain what we do today, but as you'll see as we talk more about identity in the coming months, we have a very forward-looking stance here, and we want to encourage developers to develop modern applications, to modernize what they have today, so that we can do all of this great seamless sign-on to all resources everywhere in a very easy and comprehensive way. Okay, let's talk about on-premise. Let's just start where most people are today, or have been up until very recently. Identity attributes are located all over the place. You've got HR systems, you've got databases, you've got things like Exchange, you've got LDAP databases, generic SQL databases through ODBC, RESTful web services through SOAP and Java. We've got PowerShell connectivity to be able to write out to things like CSV files even, and really we need to bring all of those things together. We do this through Identity Manager, currently under the Forefront brand, and we'll have more on that in the very near future as we rebrand Identity Manager and also start talking more about what we're going to do with the next version of Identity Manager. We want to get all of those either into Active Directory for on-premise, or as you'll see in a moment, directly out to Azure Active Directory if you want to bypass that and just go straight from those repositories out to the cloud. Now, as we try and get out to the cloud, there's a couple of different mechanisms that we need to explain, and this is really kind of a setup that underpins a lot of what we're going to talk about. The first is synchronization, the ability to take those attributes from on-premise, synchronize them out to Azure Active Directory, which is our cloud-based service. Now, when you do this, you have an option, and this is a very simple question that everyone should ask this question when you're having a conversation about identity across on-prem and the cloud. And it's a very simple question. Where are you comfortable storing your password, or more specifically, your password hashes? If you are in an organization that can only store passwords on-premise, then you need to go the federation model. If you are comfortable synchronizing the hashes of your password out to the cloud, and to be clear, it's a hash of a hash, so we never pass in clear text and we never know what that password is, then you can do synchronization. When you do this, you then can authenticate against either on-premise Active Directory, if you're accessing an on-premise resource, or against Azure Active Directory. So if you log on to Office 365 and you were doing password sync with hash, then when you log on to O365, you are authenticating against Azure Active Directory, and the authentication model stops there. Now, in the very near future, we'll be enabling write back of attributes from Azure Active Directory back down to Windows Server Active Directory. This is part of our story around the cloud-based identity, and when we do things like self-service password reset and profile management in the cloud, then those things will come back down on-prem. If you cannot synchronize your password hashes out to the cloud, to Azure Active Directory, then you are in what we call the federated model. What happens there is only the identity attributes are synchronized up, but not the password. Therefore, whenever you try and authenticate against a cloud-based service, Azure Active Directory does not know what the password is, so therefore it cannot validate whether it's accurate or not. It then must pass that authentication request back down to on-premise Active Directory, which then ensures that the verification is correct and passes back to Azure Active Directory. Yes, you're okay, you may continue on. When we do this, we can do additional things with things like Active Directory Federation services. Things like Workplace Join, which is the registration of devices into Active Directory. We support that across iOS, across Android with Samsung. We will do generic Android in the very near future as well. Experience is not great being Android, but it's going to be possible. And also, obviously, Windows PCs as well. You can bring multi-factor authentication into that as well. So there are additional things you can do when you're in the federated model. It does require some additional infrastructure to be able to do that, but it allows you to either cope with the fact that you have a regulatory or a policy requirement to not synchronize your passwords, or you just want to do some additional things and maintain that yourself on premise. It really comes down to what are you allowed to do and what is the model that fits best for what you want to achieve as an organization. Digging into the federation bit a little bit, there are two components that come into play. The first is ADFS that we just talked about. There is a front end to ADFS. This was in previous versions known as the ADFS proxy. With Server 2012 R2, we have the web application proxy, which consumes what was previously the ADFS proxy and brings additional publishing capabilities out for pre-authentication at the edge. We have a simplified deployment and management model for that, and you can publish applications either in direct pass-through model, as in there's your app over there and the application takes care of all the authentication, or you can do it in a claims-based way with reliant parties, where you can do claims and Kerberos-aware applications, Office Forms-based applications, and RESTful OAuth apps. Things like work folders, for example, is an OAuth application. You can also use this to federate with other organizations. So if you have a need to share information with other users in other organizations, you can have ADFS at each side, and you can provide access to users on each side to each other's resources so that you can do it securely. You can also then apply all this policy to SaaS-based applications as well. So the authentication comes back down to ADFS. That's where the rules engine is around who gets access to what and so on. And so you can do all of that on premise. We are moving some of these things to the cloud as well, and we'll have more information about what we're doing in this space in the coming months, a little bit later in the year. Okay, something new that we're going to be providing and talking about more in the very near future is the ability to do synchronization of identity straight out to Azure Active Directory. This is a new identity sync engine. The name is not on the slide because we haven't disclosed it yet, but this will provide the ability to synchronize from not only multi-forest Windows Server Active Directory environments, but also the generic SQL locations through ODBC, anything that PowerShell can talk to, RESTful services and web services, and LDAP v3 compliant databases as well. We can take all of that information and push it straight up to Azure Active Directory without having to go through Active Directory on-premise in the first instance like we currently do today. There'll be more information around the models of this coming out very soon. I just wanted to raise awareness that we are working on this. The cloud onboarding scenarios around making it easier to sync and federate to the cloud, to deploy the infrastructure required to do all the cloud onboarding is a high priority for us, and we have a lot of information how we're making this easier and simpler in the very near future. So watch this space. Now, this has kind of got us to the point where we've done on-prem, we're onboarded to the cloud, we're getting things out there, but what happens when you get to the cloud? Let's talk a little bit about Azure Active Directory. And what exactly is Azure Active Directory? It is a comprehensive identity and access management cloud-based solution. It is not domain controllers running in the cloud. These are not VMs running on IaaS or anything crazy like that. This is a genuine, built from the ground up, cloud-based RESTful service that we can leverage for identity and access management. We've had this for a long time now. It's been running Office 365. It's the underpinning to O365, to the authentication mechanisms in Windows Intune, Dynamics DRM. Other ISC partners are building on this as well. But this is really our cloud-based model. It brings directory services, identity governance. We're going to talk about access to applications and SaaS apps, and a standards-based platform for developers to build modern applications that are cloud-orientated. We have a new offer called Azure Active Directory Premium that will provide identity and access management for on-premises, hybrid, and cloud. There's a lot of information around this. We disclosed the Enterprise Mobility Suite last week through Satya on Thursday, and that provides us with the ability to bring all of these things together, and there's a lot of information out there on Active Directory Premium. So on top of the free offering, it is a subscription-based service. It brings not only the robust capabilities, and we're going to talk about those in a moment, for identity and access management, but also bringing an enterprise SLA, and we are providing for customers that can't are a little cloud blocked or want some of these capabilities on-premise, we are bundling in rights to deploy and use Identity Manager on-premise. We are providing unlimited use of the servers, so you can deploy as many Identity Manager servers as you want, and we are granting one Identity Manager CAL for each subscribed user. So if you need to do password reset, synchronization, group management, and so on premise, then we are providing Identity Manager as part of Azure Active Directory Premium. Now, let's talk a little bit about Azure Active Directory and what it's got in the cloud. So Connect and Sync, we talked a little bit about this already, the ability to synchronize those identities up, bring them in through, and as we talked about, the direct-to-cloud model that's coming very shortly as well. We have nearly 1,200, I think we might even be over 1,200 now, SaaS applications. I'm going to show you what this looks like in the demo, but this makes it really easy for customers to come in, provide through the Access panel the ability for users to hit an application portal and get single sign-on to SaaS applications. What we do here is you can pre-populate what those credentials are. So, very easy example, Twitter. You might have a corporate Twitter account that you don't want users to know what the credentials are. If they leave the company, you have to change them. They can get socially engineered and bad things happen. You can populate the Twitter handle and password into the Twitter published SaaS application, and then when the user logs onto Twitter, they don't ever have to enter those credentials. It's all controlled from on-premise. You provide the groups and so on, and then if the user leaves the organization, they lose access to the application. You can also bring in your own line of business and custom apps as well. So we provide not only the gallery of pre-populated, but also the ability to bring your own and to integrate those into the application panel and be able to publish your own applications and provide single sign-on too. When you do this, we provide a console. I'm going to show you this in the demo, the ability to see the users. As you can see in the screenshot that's up on the slide, there's information from local Active Directory, so that's what's synchronized from on-premise Active Directory. You can see there's a Microsoft account in there. You can see Azure Active Directory cloud-based users in there as well, bringing it all together so you can do all the things that you need online. Bringing all of the centralized SaaS apps and so on, we talked about the ability to publish these applications, add everything in, and then also being able to secure the process of the application management. So we talked about the Twitter example. If someone leaves your organization, you really don't want them to be able to continue to use that application when they leave. We want to make sure that they are removed from that, and then when they lose their corporate credentials, they also lose access to all their SaaS applications as well. That's a good thing. We can monitor and protect. We have a number of built-in security features. I'm going to show you what those reports look like. And being able to use machine learning. Azure Active Directory is spanned across the globe and all of the data centers, and so we know where users are logging on. We look for access patterns, and being able to do things like the impossible travel scenario where a user logs on from, say, New York and then logs on from London within a 3-hour period. It's not possible to get from New York to London in 3 hours. So therefore, something must be going on. Someone's either lost their credentials and they've been stolen, or they're sharing the credentials, which is just as bad. Also, being able to predict patterns in usage. Like if I log on from the same kind of machine all the time, maybe I'm running Windows with IE, and I access apps that way, and then all of a sudden I log on from a Chromebook. Well, that's kind of odd. I've never done that before. So being able to see patterns in usage, that things might be just a little bit out of control, and we want to be able to detect the anomalous sign-in activity and see that things have gone on that we might want to care about, and being able to take action based on that as well. Things like being able to enforce a multi-factor authentication or require a user to reset their password when we see behavior that we think is a little suspicious. A little bit about the differences between Azure Active Directory free and premium offers. I'll leave this table up for a little while so you can scan through. This information is provided as well. Pretty much you can see what you get for free. There's a limit on 500K objects in the directory, whereas with Azure AD Premium there's no limit. the limited number of applications. When you are in the free model, you can only do 10 apps per user. There's no limit in premium. And then the additional capabilities like the group-based management, the self-service capabilities, the ability to reset passwords for cloud users and so on. Reports are across both. And then the advanced capabilities further on down around the security reporting, the usage reporting, being able to do branding so that you can provide your own look and feel, and of course multi-factor authentication coming in there as well. So just a little bit of, so you can see the differences and the value we bring from the Azure Active Directory Premium side. Okay, continuing on. We've unified the environment. We've now got our identity across on-prem and cloud. We're syncing, we're federating, we're doing all this great stuff. Now what can you do? Let's talk about enabling users with self-service and single sign-on. Self-service, on-premise. What is currently Forefront Identity Manager provides self-service group management, so the ability to allow users to create groups, make decisions about who's in those groups, provide access to those groups, and so on. It is in their own profile details, so if information changes or if information is missing. And what you'll see in all of these is providing this from self-service means that IT doesn't have to spend money running some queries and so on and spending time updating these when the users can do it themselves. It's cheaper and it's faster. Users being able to reset their own passwords in the event that things go wrong. They go on leave and come back and can't remember. Being able to authenticate the user, verify that they are who they say they are, and then being able to reset that password. Onboarding and contracting, so the ability for managers to be able to create a user and have them assigned to specific roles and being able to have that automatically set up without having to go through an IT process. And then, of course, all of these things are workflow and policy driven. So routing, being able to enforce approval mechanisms and so on, so that people can't, A, do things that they shouldn't, and B, appropriate policy is applied in all of these mechanisms. So this is what we provide on-premise with Identity Manager today. Looking ahead and thinking about Azure Active Directory Premium, the cloud-based self-service experiences, again, we are going to provide the self-service password reset and change, which is fantastic. The ability to edit their profiles. Once we have the right back, they'll be able to do this in a cloud-based web console and bring that back down on-prem. Being able to do access requests through the self-service. I'm going to show you the access panel in the demo so you can see what that looks like. Being able to get access to all those SaaS apps that we talked about, using that single username, single password, and then, of course, leveraging your existing investments. The ability to take what we've got today and not throw that away, but actually extend and build on it is really one of the key fundamentals that we bring to the market, and it provides us with a unique ability to provide on-prem and cloud and hybrid identity across all of these things. Okay, single sign-on. Being able to access all those resources, we talked about all the different repositories, making sure that they're all in sync to access resources. The Azure Active Directory, all the sync configuration, we've talked about those already. Going up to those seamless access to Office 365, Windows Engine, all the cloud-based apps, the third-party SaaS apps, everything that's in the gallery, and being able to configure all of those. When you bring this all together, this is a very, very powerful solution. And really, this is a summary slide of pretty much everything we've talked about thus far. Being able to do all of these things is incredibly powerful, and it provides our customers with the ability to do all of these things with things that we have in the market today. And we will continue to build on those over time as well. Looking at the pre-integrated SaaS apps, this is just a little bit of slide palooza. So you can see the logos for companies that we have in there. This is obviously by no means the sum total. We have coming on 1,200 in there now. So this just gives you a feel that we've been working very hard to make sure that we have the key SaaS apps in there, that they're integrated, and we continue to build these out over time and work with these SaaS application vendors to be able to provide that tight integration. All right, last section. Now that we've got that single identity, let's see how we bring that identity into play around authentication, access control, and then also governance and compliance. Active Directory, the fundamental underpinning of how we've done identity for the last 12 odd years, and before that with NT4 domains and so on as well. With 2012, we brought in a number of key features and new improvements in Active Directory. We provided virtualization support and the ability to rapidly scale things like domain controller cloning, support for virtualization, the ability to detect when we're virtualized, and in the event that someone does something silly like rolls back a snapshot or so on, we don't completely break the Active Directory. So we're providing the ability to stay on top of that, leverage the virtualization platforms on premise, and scale as you need. We brought in a lot of PowerShell and the ability to do pretty much everything within the interface is also under the hood, actually using PowerShell to achieve that. You can capture those results through the history viewer and so on, and we've made it much easier to deploy and upgrade Active Directory. There's a number of hands-on labs that we've built and provided to show just how easy this is. Instead of having to remote into PCs and servers, run a plethora of tools, we've provided a single central place where you can push all of these deployments so you can A, automate it, and B, do it remotely. Connecting to Azure Infrastructure Services, so IaaS, we provide support to be able to run Active Directory Federation services and Windows Server Active Directory up there when you want to provide either a closer authentication mechanism in the cloud, or you want to move away from running on-prem and host your virtual machines in the cloud. Providing developers the ability to integrate applications. We've talked a little bit about that already. And then something new that came in was the ability to activate clients. Windows 8 and above, Server 2012, and Office 2010 and above, the ability to automatically activate these simply by virtue of joining the domain. Domain membership drives the authentication. It allows our customers who don't want to deploy KMS or use MAC keys to basically drive the activation of Windows and Office simply by joining the Active Directory domain. Now, multi-factor authentication. We've talked about user sign-on, single sign-on, usernames and passwords, but multi-factor authentication brings these additional levels of capability and to verify that a user is who they say they are. The way that this works with the Azure multi-factor authentication service, I should say, when a user attempts to log on, if that application is configured to require MFA, and Active Directory Federation Services in 2012 R2 has the ability to configure the requirement for MFA not only as part of conditional access policies, but also on a per application basis as well. When that application requires the MFA, it will make a call out to Azure Active Directory, the multi-factor authentication service, and it will challenge the user to respond. That the user then responds. That could be using the mobile application. It could be a text message that they have to reply to, or it could be a phone call where they either just need to answer the phone and press hash, or answer the phone and enter a PIN code. You get to choose how you want that. We provide portals so that users can self-manage if you want them to be able to change, or as an administrator, you can just enforce the authentication type that you want. On the assumption that they respond appropriately, the multi-factor authentication service will respond back down to the application, and the user is then allowed to continue on. Sorry, I pushed the button too fast. My apologies. So, again, with multi-factor authentication, this is we provide some multi-factor authentication with Office 365. Again, here's just a simple table to be able to see where the O365 capability sets in around administrators and users being able to do MFA. The full service, which is provided, allows the ability to do things like custom greetings, fraud alert, provide you access to the SDK if you want to integrate your own applications against it, security reports and so on, being able to block and unblock users, and so on. So there's a lot more value in the full service than what we provide as part of the Office 365 service. Now, data protection, the last mile. For 10, 11 years, 12 years, we have had Active Directory rights management. We've had a relatively low adoption rate of this. It's been quite tough to deploy. It's only worked with Windows and Office. It's had a number of blockers and so on. So late last year, we rolled out for the first time the Azure Rights Management Services. Azure Rights Management Services is the underpinning for using rights management in Office 365. So if any of you are using O365 and have checked the box to turn on rights management, or you're able to do rights management within Office 365, that is using the Azure Rights Management Service. We've now added that up. We have some hybrid options, so the ability to run this not only on against on-premise resources, but also up to Exchange and SharePoint running in virtual machines. So there are connectors for SharePoint, connectors for Exchange, and connectors for file servers on-premise as well. So it's not just against O365, it's also down to on-premise services, SharePoint, Exchange, and file servers. You can use it to securely share documents with other people externally. Because it's cloud-based, it allows you to share it with anyone externally in a much easier way without having to do federation or publishing or anything crazy like that. And we are also providing clients that run across the multiple platforms, not just Windows and Office. So today, we're building out. We've got some early design concepts out there, so you can see what that's going to look like. We will continue to build out that ecosystem. We have protection through PDFs, for example, with Foxit. We'll continue to work with Adobe and other developers who can build this capability in. And our goal is to be able to provide rights management on any document across any platform. And so as we get these vendors on board, as we build out this service, what you'll see is native capability to protect information and do information sharing in a very secure way. We have an interim solution at the moment called P-File. This allows you to put a rights management wrapper around the outside of any document on any platform. And it does 3 out of the 4 key things. It allows you to encrypt the information and protect it at rest. It protects it in transit because it's rights protected. It requires authentication. Where it stops is that it's basically password protected. So once the user authenticates, they then have full access to the information. It doesn't protect the data on edit. That requires the native applications that we are now in the process of building out. So 3 out of 4 is a great start. Once we get native applications and the developers on board from the other vendors, then it becomes a very powerful solution where we really can do any document on any platform. A little bit about governance and compliance. We do this with Identity Manager today through the Behold suite. It allows us to define and manage access based on user roles. It allows us to do segregation of duties, so making sure that there's not incompatible permissions. You shouldn't, for example, you shouldn't be able to raise a PO and approve it. So there's a very simple example. We want to be able to do self-service access requests and approvals around things. We want to do attestation to make sure that you have access to what you should have access to and you don't have access to anything you shouldn't have. We need to allow managers to be able to review and approve those rights. And then we need to be able to demonstrate that that you are complying with organizational policies and industry regulations and so on. So we provide this through the Identity Manager solutions today. It is a small part of the portfolio. We'll have more on this in the future. So that's a lot of information about what we do across hybrid identity and so on. What I want to do now is be able to show you some of this stuff so you can get a feel for what we're really doing there. So I am going to bring up a demo machine. Now, obviously, this is a webinar, and I can really only share from my desktop. So I'm going to use a virtual machine here. That's a Windows 8.1 machine. Most of what I'm going to show you works across iOS for iPad and also Android as well. So I'll highlight where everything is there. I see there's a question around Azure RMS and O365 RMS. It's the same underpinning service. We are working through what the differences are between what you get with Office 365 and what you get in the full services. There are a couple of differences today, and there will be more differences moving forward as well. So like we've got with MFA, like we've got with Azure Active Directory, we will create a difference between those two things. So more on this in the very near future. I agree, Joanne. We do need those to sell the difference. Today, there's very little difference, to be frank. However, looking at the roadmap for rights management, there is a lot of new stuff coming, that won't go into the Office 365. So today, they're very level pegged. There's only a couple of very slight differences. Over time, however, we will continue to build out the bigger service, and we will provide what is appropriate to Office 365 users there, but there will be differences. Okay, I want to start back at the beginning. We talked about users and the ability to get applications on. So I'm just going to start, and the first thing I'm going to do is log on because my session is timed out. And I'm logging on to what's called the company portal here. Now, the company portal is the way that we manage devices. It's the way that we have to load applications onto devices that are not domain joined. You can see here I've got a number of applications available to me. Now I've got some of them installed, and I've got some failures going on. Something funny must be going on here. You can see that I have the devices that I have enrolled for management, so I can self-manage. I can click on my iPad, for example. I have the ability to remove it from management. When I remove it from management, what that's going to do is remove the company data, remove the company applications, and remove all of the policy and profiles that we've pushed down as well. I can do that across the different platforms. You can see I've got an iPad, I've enrolled my Android, I have a Windows Phone, I have a couple of VMs, so PCs that I've installed here, and then a Surface RT. Contact information in the event that I need some help over there. Just a little look at the company portal. Now, this is really annoying. No. That's how we get applications on, which is great. Now, moving forward from an identity point of view, I want to show you a couple of things. Let me, yeah. The first thing I want to point out is when we want to provide access to on-premise resources, I'm going to take you through a journey through on-prem and then cloud and then SaaS applications as well. New in Windows 8.1 is the ability to do what we call a workplace join. And workplace join provides us with the ability to enforce additional levels of verification against not only the user, but their device as well. And we do this through the modern control panel settings. Now, you can see that I have already turned on device management, so that's the Intune service. I did that ahead of time simply because it takes about 10 minutes to run, and that's not a very exciting thing for you guys to have to wait for. The join button at the top is how we do the workplace join. Now, let me just show you what happens when we try and do something without workplace join. So I have a SharePoint site set up. The first thing you'll notice is that I am redirected to my company logon, Contoso demo, and so I'm going to try and sign in. It is going to show me that my device is, I'm access denied. My device is not registered. We have configured SharePoint to require device registration in order to access. It's not that my password was wrong. My password was right. It's that I need my username, my password, and device registration to be able to do that. So what I'm going to do is go back, and this is really hard to do on a machine that is a VM and in a webinar. I'm going to go back, go to my workplace, and complete the workplace join. Now, something you're not going to be able to see because it's on my phone is that I'm actually going to be challenged with a multi-factor authentication as part of this. So you will see that as when I did my verification, that multi-factor authentication is required. I'm going to click continue. I have configured my MFA to use the remote, the application on my phone. I have just received a pop-up on my phone. I've clicked verify, and then you saw automatically that the screen continued on. So I was able to register my device just by entering my username and password and then completing the multi-factor authentication. We have now completed device reg. What has happened in that process is two things. One, a certificate has been installed onto that device, so we are now doing certificate authentication of the device. Second of all, a record was created in Active Directory for this device. It is not domain joined. It is in a work group. This could be an iOS device, an Android device, or a Surface RT. And so we're able to register devices into Active Directory. It's not as powerful as a domain join, but it allows us to do conditional access. We provide this across iOS, Android with Samsung today. We'll provide generic Android very soon, Windows obviously, and then Windows 7, we have provided a backport as well for a couple of very specific scenarios. So now that I have done that, I'm going to come back. I'm going to try and go back to that SharePoint site again and sign in. And this time, because I presented my username and password and I actually have completed the workplace join, I passed the rules engine. It checked the certificate, validated it was okay, checked it against the record in Active Directory, everything was good, and then it continued on. So we've now done a conditional access using identity with MFA, with device registration to get to an on-premise resource. Great. What happens when we go to the cloud? Let's continue on and go to Office 365. I'm going to sign in. Obviously, it doesn't know who I am yet. I'll type my adhall@contestedemo.com and click Next. It finds my account. If you watch very quickly in the address bar, it actually redirected to ADFS because I was device registered and I now have a single sign-on capability with ADFS and device registration. I went straight through to my to Office 365 without needing to enter a password. I'd already authenticated on-prem, so now that single identity has been verified, I'm able to go straight through to Office 365 without any additional capability. I can go through, I can get to my OneDrive and so on, all the things that you want to do with Office 365 and all that kind of stuff. So standard kind of stuff there. That's Office 365. Let's go a step further. Let's go and take a look at SaaS applications. Again, I'm going to go to myapps.microsoft.com, which is our access panel for Azure Active Directory Premium. That is going to take me through the logon. Note, I got single sign-on, again, all the way through. Now, I have access to SaaS applications. These are just a random selection of apps that I've set up for demo, and we have the ability to publish these. You can see up the top left, I get single sign-on to Office 365 and so on, and my IT department has given me all these SaaS applications. By way of example, clicking on Twitter, I just click on Twitter, and that is the last thing that I will have to do, and I am now in my Twitter account. Okay, I didn't have to enter a username and password. I don't even know what the username and password was. I went to the panel, I clicked on it, and it passed me through all the way straight into my Twitter account. I think I set up Facebook as well, which should take me straight through and redirecting, and that's going to take me straight through. And there is in my demo Facebook account as well. Now, those are social media examples, obviously, but all of the SaaS applications that are in there from a user point of view is that ability to get authenticated once, and then I got single sign-on to O365 and single sign-on through to SaaS applications as well.
That's where we need the applause track for that.
All right. Now, let me go and show you what the IT side of this looks like. I'm now logged into the Azure portal as the administrator of the back end of this kind of setup. So let me just go back a little bit, and let me just scroll down. So under Active Directory, we have Wingtip Toys here, and this is the Azure Active Directory administrative console. Under users, again, you can see the users that we have, the local Active Directory users. You've got the Windows Azure cloud-based users, the local Active Directory users, and so on. We can manage multi-factor authentication and so on here. Groups, the ability to synchronize groups up from the local Active Directory, so those come through, as well as cloud-based groups for access to SaaS applications and so on. Applications, we talked about the applications that are in the list. Here's a number of SaaS applications that we have, and the gallery that we were talking about. When we add an app, you have the application that your organization is developing. So that's the ability for you to bring your own application, provide the endpoints for authentication and all that kind of great stuff. And then there's the applications from the gallery. There's the 1,134 applications that we have, There's a huge list. We have the featured applications, which have some pretty big, heavy-hitting names in there, as well as all the 1,134 apps from everything across many different industries. We have finance applications, things like ADP and so on. We have e-commerce. We have ERP applications in there. I mean, we've been working very hard to bring as many of these through as we possibly can and make it really easy for companies to say, I use that app, let me come in here, select it, and basically add it in. As simple as that, it's now configured, and you can assign the users to that either through groups or individual users. Now, obviously, you can delegate out some rights to create some groups and all that kind of thing. Once you publish users, if you publish this app to a group, then you could allow your users to self-manage access to that group as well. The reports that we were talking about are in here as well. So talking about the sign-ins from multiple geographies, so the impossible travel report. I think I'll need to go back a little bit further. The data is a little out of date. And here you can see an example of what can be shown. So Audrey's managed to sign in somewhere in America and somewhere in the UK within 2 hours and 52 minutes. Just not possible using known transport mechanisms to get from one destination to another. Because of that, you can do things like requiring Audrey to change the password, so you can do a reset, or you can enforce a multi-factor authentication at next logon. If her account has been compromised or the password's been shared or whatever the case may be, the next time someone tries to do it, either they're going to have to pass a multi-factor auth, or the password's going to have been reset and they're going to have to go through a process of revalidating who they are. In either case, you end up with a scenario where they can no longer do bad things, and the ability is there to do everything. So, yeah, very powerful solutions and the ability to do all of that. So, let's go back to the desktop. I'm going to talk about data protection a little bit. One of the new features that we ship in Windows Server 2012 R2 and then with Windows 8.1 as well is a solution called Work Folders, which is secondary to this story, but I'm just explaining what it is that you're actually seeing. Work Folders is a data synchronization capability. We've obviously got OneDrive out there, which is a consumer-based service. We have OneDrive for Business, which allows you to, would help if I could type. Yeah, you know the demo's live when I mistype. The ability to do SharePoint offline, so that's OneDrive for Business is taking O365, SharePoint online, and also on-premise SharePoint online as well. And Work Folders allows us to take file servers offline. So I'm just connecting up. Obviously, this is a machine that's just connected to the internet. It's doing all of this over the internet. It's going to ask me where I want to stand it. What's going on here? Everybody look away for a sec. I didn't clean that up in my last demo. Nobody saw that, right? Okay, so Work Folders is now synchronizing down. You'll see some data on the left-hand side start to pop up. And on the right-hand side, you can see some information about Work Folders. My administrator is obviously very generous in giving me a heady 50 megabytes of space to be able to access things here. All right. Okay, interesting. What's going on here? Now, what I want to do is do something around rights management. So I am going, oops, that's what I clicked. I'm just going to grab PowerPoint. I could do this with any file. I'm just going to use PowerPoint because it's nice and easy. And I'm going to create a document locally here on a drive. I'm just going to type the word confidential. This could add lots of different things. So, say this. And we'll just say hybrid identity. Webinar demo. Can't type either. And I'm just going to save that. It's got the word confidential in it. What's going to happen on the right-hand side, you will see that document synchronized back up. So we're achieving a couple of things here. One is, from a data protection point of view, we've now taken a copy of a document that's only locally on PC and got a copy of it back in our data center. So we've kind of achieved goal number one. Goal number two is that we are now at the back end running an information protection policy where we're looking for the key phrase confidential. Now, this could be any words, any phrases, regular expressions, search for things like credit cards, addresses, social security numbers, government ID, whatever it is that you care about. We use machine learning and machine scanning to be able to automatically scan content, look for these things, and then on the basis of that, apply information policy. What happens is that in this particular case, we've got a policy that says any document with the word confidential in it is something that we care about and that we want to apply additional levels of rigor in terms of user access to that. We are going to apply rights management to it and require the user to authenticate. Now, this will come down automatically. I'm just going to move things along a little bit faster. You saw on the right-hand side, if you were fast, the document size has now gone up to 164 kilobytes. I'm going to double-click on that. First thing you will notice, I'm going to be prompted for my credentials. I've now got a policy on this document that says you created a document with the word confidential into it. I want to authenticate that you are who you say you are. I will type my username and password. It will authenticate me. And now when I open the document, you can see that it has rights protection. You can see the yellow bar at the top. Okay, we can do this across any documents that we can scan on the file server through content filters, and you can apply whatever rights management templates that you want. This does integrate with the Azure Rights Management Service, so you can either use on-prem AD RMS or you can use Windows Azure RMS, and we have a strong roadmap around what we're going to be able to do with these things, such as additional levels of validation from a user point of view. So we've brought additional levels of user identity validation in as part of that. So let's think about this PC now. We've installed some applications. If I go back to the start screen, you can see I've got a couple of applications that are installed here. I've got data on the device in terms of work folders and so on. And if I have a look down in the policy settings, if I have a look here, you can see I've got a couple of VPN connections that are set up. So this machine is managed. If I lost this device, if I just wanted to hand it off to someone, pretend it's an iPad, pretend it's a Surface RT, whatever you want it to be, when we remove from management, we have the ability to remove all of these things. So what I'm going to do is bring up my workplace settings. I'm going to turn off management. Now, if I'm fast enough, I will get back to here. You will see those applications disappeared. Okay, so we had two apps that were there. We have now removed those VPN connections. They are now gone. And if I come back, and this will happen within a short space of time, but again, I'm going to cause it to happen straight away, we're going to break work folders. The data on the left-hand side is gone. Okay, you saw it disappear. And on the right-hand side, synchronization has stopped, and the error message that's on the screen is that the enterprise ID for this PC was remotely revoked, and all data has been deleted.
Claptrack.
So what we've done there is taken a device into an organization, verified it that we were who we say we were. We added it to management, which put some policy and apps and data and stuff on the device. We configured it for workplace join, so we authenticated the user and the device, got access to on-prem, got access to cloud, single sign-on to SaaS apps, synchronized data, automatically backed up information, applied information policy, required authentication. And then in the event that something went wrong, either through an IT-triggered event, like I ring the help desk and say, sorry, I just lost my device, please kill it, or I did it myself saying, I'm just done with this, get rid of all my work stuff. We've now put it back in the state that it was. All of my personal applications are still there. If I go back to the start screen, you can see that all my photos and that kind of stuff is still there. But we've only taken the corporate data off. That's what we mean by hybrid identity, information protection, bringing together Active Directory, Identity Manager on-prem, the Sting confederation capabilities, Azure Active Directory Premium, the Rights Management Service, the Multi-Factor Authentication Service. all of these things together, and so all the management was Windows Intune. This is, as we think about it, the Enterprise Mobility Suite. I just showed you end to end, basically what we can deliver, or not all that we can deliver, a lot of what we can deliver in one kind of end-to-end view of what EMS Suite is really all about, and the reason why we're going to market and why we feel so confident about what we can do here. So, by way of review, we talked about the unification of the environment. We talked about the central identity, the synchronization and federation capabilities. We enabled users for self-service. You saw some of those in play. We enabled single sign-on. You saw that in play. You saw the strong authentication and conditional access controls. We were access denied. I showed you the Azure Active Directory premium admin view in terms of adding an app, in terms of reports, being able to manage users and so on. Didn't show you the governance and attestation, but you did see the information protection policies kicking in, the rights management policies kicking in, and then all of the selective wipe capabilities to get stuff back off again in the event that things go bad. There are a lot of resources available, and I'll hand back to Marvin in a moment to talk about the bottom half, but we really want to see evaluations of 2012 R2 Windows Server. You can go sign up for Azure Active Directory. You can learn about Identity Manager. I'm going to be releasing next week, actually the week after, on the 15th of April. There will be a new hybrid identity website. There is a new hybrid identity datasheet, a new hybrid identity white paper. What you saw in terms of slides is a selection from 2 new sets of content that are available, a 200 solution level, a 300 product level that gets a lot more detailed. We've got people-centric IT videos. There's new hybrid identity videos, one for end user, one for IT. So there's a lot of information coming in the very near future, so you can go out. All of the demos that I did are available through contosodemo.com for Microsoft employees. You can go sign up for this. It's all freely available. You can do all of the same demos that I just did. Nazos is going to have more information about how we can do the back-end IT experiences for Azure Active Directory Premium. We provide all the end-user experiences through Contoso Demo, but the IT stuff's a little more challenging for us. But we do have solutions there. And then Marvin and team have this great offer that you can take advantage of too. And at this point in time, I will hand back to Marvin. I've done enough talking. And basically, we're going to be online for a little bit longer. Please ask questions and so on. So I'll hand back to you, Marvin.
Great. Thanks, Adam. That was a really brilliant job. What I'd like to just talk about is that we've been, Oxford Computer Group has been brought on as PTSP for this program, and that means that we have some paid resources to help you land this in the field. Those people are attending the webinar. You see Mark Riley here, and then also Jay Bruton down below, and they're both architects. And the concept in what's been put together here with Neha, and also great work with Adam and also Nazos to sort of pull together the whole concept, is that first there's architectural design session, and the idea of that is a 2-day session where you're really trying to solve what are those key use case scenarios and challenges within the organization. And then secondly is then you either take it to a proof of concept or to a pilot. There is BIF cash available for that, and we've got more details on sort of the costing of how you would consume BIF and turn that into an SOW to start an engagement. Also, there will be a webinar running each for the next 2 weeks, and that will be on Tuesdays and Thursdays Eastern and Pacific time. A invite will be forwarded to you along with this presentation deck right after the close of this. Everybody who's attended, Jackie's got that and we'll send that out to you. And the invite will be for next week for a repeat of this webinar that Adam has just done on 2 times. And then after that, the cadence of the webinars will be a phase 1 and phase 2 type webinar, and phase 1 being a hybrid webinar, and then phase 2 being a unified device management webinar. And so that's pretty well the story around the progress, which is, first of all, you have the the capability of engaging clients. And so if you give them a 100 and 200 level sort of presentation, and then the 300 would be this webinar, and then starting to gauge on one-on-one. Also, at the same time, there's a roadshow that's being run in several cities. There's some hands-on lab. You see Christian is attached here as well from Synergy Advisors. And so in that, he has organizing the 19 cities, I believe it is, total. And it's a one-day agenda. So we encourage you to drive your customers to that for a more in-depth overview of it. And that's there'll be a schedule coming out. I can include that on the email to everybody as well. So ways to engage: 100 level, 200 level information to them and vetting it, then sending them to webinars, one-on-ones if you have high velocity type of engagements, and then moving to architectural designs, proof of concepts and pilots, and then encouraging clients to come to the roadshows. So why don't we go into an open Q&A session? And I really like the way you summed it up, Adam, before, which was, what's the difference for around RMS? And I think, Christian can speak extensively to that, of how RMS was deployed in the field, and I'm sure all of you have experience. But I think the biggest thing is, how do you manage access rights to all of these things and do that in an efficient way that you don't have administrators sitting on different systems? And what this does is tie all those concepts together. And when you're competing against somebody like an Okta or anyone in the various verticals of this, you have a much more complete story about how it works as a hybrid identity story. So with that, we have some questions in the panel, and it can be Nazos or Adam or whoever would like to jump in. One is from Christy. Can we get more of a UDM resource at the top of the page? So Christy, if you'd like to come on and unmute and sort of speak in more detail what you're looking for and thinking about, that would be great. This is a all Microsoft audience.
I think it was a referral to the resources at the top of the page on the screen are the hybrid identity resources, and that's because this is the hybrid identity session. Yeah. There will be there's a complete list of ones that needs to be put together at the moment. The UDM, the desktop vert, the hybrid identity, and the AIP resources are all in those 4 different buckets. I think what she's asking for is just a complete list of all resources for EMS at the EMS level.
So what we should do then is just add more links, even, Adam, before we push this deck out then maybe?
Yeah, I think if we added the link to Intune and the link to Azure RMS, we'd pretty much be done.
Okay, excellent. And then Travis, nice job. Powerful suite, great. Okay. And then Nazos.
Nazos has answered the Azure AD Premium. So Nazos has set up the capability to request access for an IT side. So if you want to log on to a tenant and show the back end, Nazos has done a great job of getting some accounts that we can use there. We don't have an easy way of trialing Azure Active Directory Premium yet, so this is an interim solution from Nazos.
Great. And then does anybody want to comment about the value proposition, early discussions you're having with clients, any of those sort of things that can be shared in terms of this webinar? And at this point, we can stop recording, I guess. Well,